Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling, well, a really high voltage moment in global politics.
Definitely high voltage.
It didn't start with some quiet diplomatic note. No, this was more like a digital thunderbolt.
That's one way to put it.
Okay, picture this. October 29th, 2025. President Trump's at the Pacific Rim Summit, Busan, South Korea. He's literally moments away from meeting President Xi Jinping.
Right. High stakes already.
And then he drops this post. Short, simple, and honestly pretty devastating. Quote, "We're the only country that doesn't test, and I don't want to be the only country that doesn't test."
Boom. Just like that. That's a classic example of high stakes brinkmanship, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That single message, it just instantly threw the entire U.S. moratorium on explosive nuclear testing, which has been in place for, what, 33 years?
It's 92, yeah.
Right, 33 years. A cornerstone of non-proliferation efforts. Suddenly, it's completely up in the air.
Exactly. And that's our mission today in this deep dive. We want to unpack that deliberate flex. We need to look beyond just the post itself. Look at the geopolitical stuff that sparked it, the treaties it's putting at risk.
Decades-old treaties.
Yeah, and also this really surprising science that actually suggests the U.S. might not even need to set off a bomb anymore.
Which is a fascinating twist in itself.
It really is.
And if you connect the dots here, this isn't just, some tweet storm drama.
No.
This is serious. It's like a high-stakes poker game.
Yeah.
The chips, they're deterrence. And the pot is, well, basically planetary stability.
Well said.
It really forces every major nuclear power out there to rethink their whole strategy. Urgently. So, okay, let's unpack this. Where did the spark come from? What lit the fuse?
Right, let's get into the context, because like you said, this wasn't out of the blue. It felt very much like a direct response.
It did.
The fuse, you could argue, was lit just a few days before, and it was lit by Russia's President Putin.
That's right. Putin was personally overseeing some major strategic weapons tests. And we're talking really advanced stuff here.
What specifically?
The Burevestnik cruise missile. That's the nuclear-powered one. Its range is essentially unlimited. It can just loiter, fly around the globe.
Scary thought.
And the Poseidon torpedo, an underwater drone packed with a nuclear warhead designed to create, massive radioactive coastal threats, long-lasting ones.
And Putin called them?
He called them unique weapons no other country possesses, publicly, making sure everyone heard it.
And the timing of Putin showing off these weapons, it felt like pure diplomatic dynamite, didn't it?
Absolutely deliberate. It came right after Trump had been, putting some distance between them.
How so?
He'd cooled on the idea of a second summit, a follow-up to Budapest. And he just slapped some pretty significant sanctions on Russia's biggest oil companies.
Ah, over the Ukraine stalemate.
Exactly. So Moscow's message with those tests was immediate. It was kinetic. It was basically, our modern arsenal is ready to go. Sanctions or no sanctions.
Which, okay, that sets the stage for the counterpunch. Trump's Truth Social post.
The counterpunch arrived right on schedule.
He didn't just threaten testing. He threw out accusations. Russia, China, North Korea, Pakistan, accusing them all of sneaky underground nuclear tests.
While claiming the U.S. was playing by the rules, which, is a big claim.
A very big claim. And he went further. Said the U.S. has the world's biggest nuclear stockpile, Russia's a distant second, China is racing to catch up in 5 years.
Did he offer any proof for those numbers?
Nope. No public backing, no receipts, as people say online.
Right.
And then came the direct instruction. He told the Department of War.
Using that old term. Interesting choice.
Yeah, slipping back to the old name for the Department of Defense, told them to start testing on an equal basis.
Wow. Okay, so the message was sent, loud and clear.
And the reaction was immediate, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The global blowback was swift and predictable. Islamabad came out denying any tests. Moscow warned they'd retaliate proportionately. Beijing just called it baseless bluster.
But the core message got through, right? The U.S. moratorium, it's now clearly on the table, negotiable.
Yes, but at a potentially high cost to diplomatic stability. That clarity came with a price.
Which brings us nicely to the rules of this whole game. You mentioned the 33-year moratorium since 1992.
Correct. A voluntary moratorium on explosive nuclear tests.
And that pause, that's what's really hanging in the balance now. But, a voluntary pause must feel pretty weak if you genuinely believe your rivals are cheating.
That's the heart of the tension.
So what are the actual rules they'd be breaking?
Okay, the bedrock rule here is the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, the CTBT.
Signed back in 96.
That's the one. 187 nations signed it. And its purpose is crystal clear. ban all explosive tests, period. No wiggle room.
Why ban all of them?
The idea was to slow down the development of newer, potentially more dangerous types of nuclear weapons. If you can't test them with a bang, it's much harder to perfect them.
Makes sense. And the history. The U.S. tested over 1,000 times before 92.
1,054 tests, yeah. Russia logged 715. China, interestingly, only 47.
Wow, big difference.
Huge difference. And since the late 90s, really only North Korea has been openly setting off bombs.
Okay, but Trump's main accusation, the thing he's hanging this threat on, it's about rivals exploiting a loophole. These subcritical experiments.
Subcritical.
What exactly are those, and why would they be considered cheating?
Okay, think of subcritical experiments as a way to get vital data on nuclear materials without causing a full nuclear explosion.
So no mushroom cloud.
No mushroom cloud. They involve using high explosives to compress fissile material, like plutonium, but the reaction is designed to stop just short of going critical, short of a self-sustaining chain reaction.
Like a tiny contained pop instead of a kaboom.
That's a good way to think about it. Tiny pops. They let a country check the health and readiness of its existing warheads, maybe get data for new designs, all without technically violating the CTBT's ban on explosions.
It sounds like a gray area.
It is a very significant gray area, and it allows testing activity that's incredibly hard to detect from afar.
And U.S. intelligence seems to back up the concern, right? There was that State Department report.
Yes, that report specifically flagged increased activity at China's Lop Nor test site. Between 2020 and 2024, lots of earth moving, new tunnels, containment chambers, things consistent with preparing for tests.
And Russia.
Russia's activity at its Novaya Zemlya site is also constantly watched.
Mm-hmm.
They seem to be pushing right up against that zero yield line. Again, very hard to verify definitively, but suspicious.
So the cheating accusation isn't just pulled out of thin air. There's some basis in intelligence assessments.
There's a basis for concern, yes.
Yeah.
Whether it constitutes definitive proof of CTBT violation is debated, but the activity is concerning.
Okay, this raises a huge question, though, a really critical one, thinking about the technology involved.
Go on.
If the goal is ensuring the U.S. arsenal is safe, reliable, ready, in this age of supercomputers and, advanced digital modeling, does the U.S. actually need to go back to digging holes and setting off massive underground explosions?
That is the crucial technical question here.
And this is where, for me, it gets really fascinating. Because the answer, based on everything we're seeing from the U.S. scientific community itself, it seems to be a pretty loud no.
A resounding no, I'd say. We're talking about the success, really, of this stockpile stewardship program. Science effectively replacing brute force.
Explain that a bit. Stockpile stewardship.
It's this incredibly sophisticated program the U.S. has run since the testing moratorium began. It uses a combination of things: non-nuclear lab experiments, intense surveillance of existing weapons components, and crucially, massive supercomputing power.
Simulations.
Exactly. Highly complex simulations running on some of the world's fastest computers. They can model the physics of a nuclear detonation down to the tiniest detail.
Plus, facilities like the National Ignition Facility at Lawrence Livermore use high-energy lasers to create extreme conditions, mimicking parts of a blast.
So they can check if the bombs still work without actually blowing one up. Precisely. They can verify the integrity, the safety, the reliability of the warheads without the environmental nightmare, the huge cost, or the geopolitical fallout of actual explosive testing.
And we even had the administration's own energy secretary confirming this, right? Chris Wright.
We did. A remarkably clear statement. He said, and I'm quoting here, "With our science and our computation power, we can simulate incredibly accurately exactly what will happen in a nuclear explosion."
That's kind of jaw-dropping, isn't it? If you can simulate it accurately, why test?
It basically suggests the science has leapfrogged the political need for physical testing, at least for maintaining the current stockpile.
And this isn't just one person's opinion. The NNSA.
The National Nuclear Security Administration. Their official report to Congress just back in September 2024, it formally reaffirmed this. It stated the arsenal remains fully reliable and ready without needing underground explosive tests. The annual certifications from the lab directors are considered the gold standard for stockpile confidence.
Okay, so if the NNSA says the stockpile is fine, ready to go, proven by simulations, then why threaten to test? Doesn't that make the threat purely performative, political theater?
That's the pivot, isn't it? If the technical need is essentially zero, or at least very, very low,
then the message has to be purely political, strategic.
Exactly. And when you zoom out and look for a pattern, this tough talk, this specific threat. It doesn't feel random. It feels like it's pulled straight from a script.
A very specific script.
A very specific, very detailed playbook. Project 2025.
Ah, yes, the blueprint. Project 2025. That massive 900-page document put together by the Heritage Foundation, the conservative think tank.
Outlining a root and branch overhaul of the entire federal government, designed, as they put it, for the next conservative president.
And when you drill down into what Project 2025 says about nuclear strategy, it's almost uncanny, isn't it?
It lines up perfectly with Trump's October ultimatum. The document explicitly urges abandoning efforts to ratify the CTBT.
Get rid of the test ban treaty.
Yep. It calls for fast-tracking the design and production of new nuclear warheads, arguing the old Cold War designs are, quote, outdated.
Okay.
It demands a big ramp-up in domestic plutonium production, the core material for pits, and it very clearly identifies, quote, communist China as the main adversary needing a stronger deterrence posture.
So Trump's post, it wasn't just an angry tweet.
It reads less like an off-the-cuff reaction and more like, as you suggested earlier, someone reading talking points directly from that blueprint. Maybe not page 500 verbatim, but the core ideas, they're identical.
It's a calculated policy statement disguised as presidential impulse.
That seems highly plausible. And look, this isn't just speculation about nuclear policy fitting the plan.
No, we can see it happening elsewhere.
The Project 2025 tracker, which monitors implementation, estimates that by month 10 of this second Trump term, almost half, 48% of the blueprint's ideas were either fully implemented or actively being put into motion.
Wow, 48%. Examples.
Things like scrapping diversity, equity, and inclusion programs across government agencies, tightening immigration enforcement significantly, pulling the U.S. back out of the Paris Agreement on climate change.
Which happened again.
Key authors and supporters of Project 2025, they now hold senior positions throughout the administration. This suggests a coordinated, deliberate strategy is unfolding, not just random actions.
Okay, so the threat aligns with a pre-existing plan. Let's talk consequences. If the U.S. does follow through, if they actually break the moratorium and conduct an explosive test, what happens next? Geopolitically speaking, are we talking escalation city?
Oh, absolutely. Full-blown escalation city. Russia has already said clearly they will match any U.S. test immediately. They'll ditch their own ratification of the CTBT and likely test as well.
So Russia tests. What about China?
China is arguably the biggest potential winner, paradoxically. According to CPRI, that's the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, they track this stuff closely.
Right, the independent monitor.
CPRI says China's been rapidly expanding its arsenal anyway, adding maybe up to 100 warheads per year since 2023.
That's fast.
Very fast. If the U.S. breaks the global norm and tests, it gives China the perfect political cover and justification to conduct its own full-yield tests. They could gain invaluable data to improve their new warhead designs and validate their growing arsenal. It basically dismantles decades of non-proliferation efforts overnight.
A huge step backward.
Massive.
And hanging over all of this, there's another ticking clock, isn't there? The New START treaty.
Yes, the second major deadline looming. New START is the last major nuclear arms control treaty between the U.S. and Russia.
It limits the big strategic warheads.
Limits deployed strategic warheads to 1,550 each, plus limits on launchers like missiles and bombers.
Yeah.
But it's set to expire on February 4th, 2026.
And talks for a replacement.
Non-existent right now. Absolutely stalled, which is incredibly dangerous.
Didn't Putin offer something recently? An extension?
He did, back in July, during that meeting in Anchorage. A rather cynical move, some might say, given the circumstances. He offered a simple one-year extension.
And Trump's response?
He reportedly said something like, "It sounds like a good plan," but crucially, he hasn't formally accepted it. No signature, no agreement.
So that deadline is getting closer and closer with nothing to replace it.
Exactly. That uncertainty, combined with this new threat to resume testing, it just ramps up global anxiety exponentially.
You know, this whole situation, the unpredictability, the tough talk, it does fit the established Trump brand, doesn't it?
It absolutely fits. Prioritizing peace through strength, using an unpredictable, unapologetic style, shaking things up, disrupting norms.
His critics would call it reckless, opening Pandora's box.
They do. They see it as risking a new arms race, undermining decades of arms control.
While his supporters probably see it as a necessary wake-up slap, forcing rivals who they believe are cheating to, well, face reality.
Hailing it as strong leadership, finally calling out bad actors.
But ultimately, maybe the threat itself is the main point right now, using this high-stakes nuclear rhetoric as, like, diplomatic dynamite.
To force others back to the negotiating table, but on U.S. terms,
Yeah.
that seems very likely.
It's a calculated gamble.
It is. Trump seems to be betting that the combination of America's clear technological edge in simulations, plus the strategic direction laid out in Project 2025, is enough to maintain deterrence without actually having to follow through on the testing threat itself, at least for now.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. Recapping this deep dive. The threat President Trump made to resume U.S. nuclear testing.
It seems fundamentally less about any urgent technical need. The science, the simulation capability suggests that need just isn't there for maintaining the current stockpile.
Right. Our own tech makes the big bangs kind of obsolete for that purpose.
So it's much more about international signaling. It's about high-stakes brinkmanship. And crucially, it appears to be about sticking closely to a predefined political strategy, the Project 2025 blueprint.
Using the threat as leverage.
Precisely. But it's a dangerous game. Because, as Spry confirms, we live in a world where all 9 nuclear-armed states are already modernizing their arsenals, treaties or no treaties.
So the nuclear neighborhood was getting noisier anyway. This just turns up the volume.
Significantly.
Yeah.
And with that new start clock ticking down towards expiration in early 2026, and the testing moratorium now explicitly threatened, it leaves us all in a pretty precarious spot.
So the final thought for you, our listeners.
Yeah, the big question to ponder is this. In this incredibly high-stakes game of nuclear deterrence, what happens next? Will this unpredictable pressure lead to a bang? Will the simulations quietly keep things stable? Or could this brinkmanship, paradoxically, force some kind of last-minute deal before the clock runs out?